And so, hello there, welcome back to Anime Hair. I'm your host, Kirin. No, that's silly. Welcome back to the Writing Advice Q&A. I am indeed your host, Kirin. Every week, viewers like you submit your questions, I give you a really quick and easy answer, and then I toss them into a pool of questions, and every week, 3 of them are chosen randomly, and I answer them in great length in this video format for all of you. So do keep in mind that if you have a writing advice question or subject related to the act of writing, whether it is editing, revising, publishing, if you have a question, let me know in the comments down below. I will give you a quick and easy answer. That's kind of the new modus operandi, course of action, the way that we do things on this channel. And I will also add them for the list of questions to be answered in future videos. Today, we have a special set of questions, but before I go on anywhere, allow me to give you the formal disclaimer and remind you, as always, that the following is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Don't take it as gospel, instead take it as the ramblings of a silly person who's got a most ridiculous cup today. I was like sitting down to recording and I'm like, I can't have one of my normal cups, I gotta get one of my weirder cups. I actually don't think this is even my cup, I think this is Plague's cup. Okay. Out of the two of us, I have seen Attack on Titan, but do you see me owning this cup? Willingly buying this cup? No, the answer is no. Also, a joke that I wanted to make in the opening. Oh man, that feeling when you're 30 minutes into Netflix and chill, and he gives you this face? Anyhow, memes out of the way. 3 questions. 3 minutes a pop. I don't have an online timer this week, I have my actual timer this week, so let's take it from the top. The first question is actually a double question, not in the way you're expecting. It's 2 questions that were sent by viewers like you with rather similar points, so I'm just grouping them together and tackling them at the same time. It goes a little bit like this. I have a lot of subliminal underlying history behind a few characters that I don't want to blatantly reveal them. What's the best way to do this that's effective so the readers don't just read past it? And I've been struggling with foreshadowing without making things too obvious. Do you have any advice on that? So, I believe this is one of those classic writer questions. This is one of those things that a lot of writers deal with. And it's this idea of you're doing something with your story. Whether it is underlying history or foreshadowing, there are elements that you're doing that you want the readers to notice, but you don't want them to notice them right away or to guess them. You want some of your readers to catch the foreshadowing as to what's going to be happening later in the story. The little hints, the little breadcrumb trail that you leave behind certain clues, and that allows some readers, the most astute ones, to notice, oh, that's what you meant. When this happened back then, this showed us that this, oh, that, exactly that. The problem with the situation is twofold, because no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, there are going to be readers who will not understand or will not catch or will not see any of the foreshadowing you are dropping. That's beyond your control. What is also beyond your control are the other type of readers who are going to notice everything. Primarily, other writers who will notice all of your foreshadowing. Why? Well, because in writing and storytelling, whether it is in the written format or visual format, no detail is ever wasted. Remember that. Remember that I told you that. If someone drops a detail, I can assure you it's meaningful in some way, shape, or form. That's kind of the part of writing, and the more you write, the more you read, the more you ingest things related to the medium, you are able to notice those subtle hints. So, if I was to read your book, I am pretty sure that I would catch what you were throwing. But not everyone is going to. There will be readers who will catch what you're throwing, as I mentioned, but there will also be readers, kind of like that one friend when you go to the movies, and you're walking out of the movies, and you're like, yeah, this person was the person from the beginning, and then they go like, oh, I get it now. That sort of reader is not particularly bad per se, but some people are more astute or more aware or more willing to not seemingly let things slide as other people. As I mentioned, you have no control over the situation, you have no control over how people will react or how people will ingest or understand what you're saying. This brings us to a fork in the road. I feel that there's 2 situations here. You can either make what you're trying to say super clear so that everyone understands, if you require everyone to understand what you're trying to say, or to catch what you're throwing to continue on with that idea. if you need that, then you must make it clear. You must outwardly state what you're trying to say, otherwise people won't understand it. The alternate situation is that you are actually okay with not everyone catching what you're throwing. If you are completely okay with some people not understanding the entire overarching, or rather underlying secrets and messages and history that's going on in your story, some of the foreshadowing, if you're okay with some people messing up on that, then I think it's okay. People say that the best foreshadowing is the foreshadowing that you don't notice, and I don't agree with that at all, because technically speaking, if nobody notices the foreshadowing, is it actually there? Part of foreshadowing is realizing that something is out of place, or that a detail that seems seemingly unrelated has been dropped into the story, and as no detail is ever wasted, as the reader, you question, wait a minute, is this related to what's going to be happening later? Is that thing that the character said or did that seems entirely out of character and place, is this relevant to the plot? Generally it is. Sometimes it's not, but generally it is. But again, if you require everyone to know, then you have to say it. Otherwise, leave it there. Leave it for the people who will be astute enough to catch it on the first try, and for those who will read the book again and notice all of the foreshadowing. That's the best part. Sometimes I read books twice just to get that feeling again. So, those are my thoughts, and I hope that helps. And now for the second question of the day, the centerpiece for today's video. It goes a little bit, or rather precisely like this. I enjoy your videos and energy. What are your thoughts on originality? I find myself spending a lot of time on story development, so I am able to get more original content, which I find very time-consuming and tedious. Oh yes, it's been a little while since we last talked about originality, so let's take it from the top. Original ideas, or the concept of originality, is kind of a general pitfall of writing, and basically pretty much every other creative medium, probably. The thing is this, are there such things as original ideas? The answer is that it doesn't actually matter at all. You know why? Humans have a special power. Humans have a special ability. And I've said this in the past, and I'm going to say it again because I think it's really fun, but I want a sci-fi setting, or a fantasy setting, where there are various species of people, I guess, or alien races, and the only race in the universe that has the power of reductivity is humanity. Because we as humans have the great power of just squinting our eyes and seeing whatever we want to see. You may be wondering, Max, what are you talking about? You can look at whatever idea. You can look at any book and just be reductive, just reduce it to whatever set of concepts. Oh yeah, this book is just about this and this, ignoring all of the content, everything that happens in that book, and just reducing it to a set of statements. And, I mean, when you reduce anything to a set of statements, it can be whatever you want it to be. And I know that this is sounding a little bit ranting right now, and really meta when you think about it, but the entire idea of TV tropes is literally this concept. Just reducing things to concept. A character who happens to be heroic in nature, going on a journey of sorts, battling against a great force of antagonistic enemies. This is the power that we have as humans, the ability to just reduce, squeeze down, and just get bare concepts out of very, very complex situations. Some may even argue that this is what has allowed us to survive as a species for so long, but it doesn't matter. Original ideas don't matter. Let's become less meta and actually talk about writing advice for now. Original ideas, or really ideas for that fact, don't actually matter for stories. Yes, there is the point people can make that a really interesting, not original, not good, interesting story idea can get someone to look at you, to look at your work, maybe even get them to buy your book. But an interesting idea alone won't carry your story. I'm pretty sure that everyone watching this video can think of a pretty cool story idea that went nowhere, or a pretty cool story idea that was not very well executed. And this is kind of the pitfall, as I mentioned, of the idea of originality. And I don't want to be mean, I don't want to be cruel, but I took creative writing courses and I met a lot of people who would show up being like, this is the most original a story idea that I've ever come up with, that I've ever seen. And then like someone like around the corner just does the reductive human power and goes, actually, when you think about it, your story idea sounds like this other story idea, so it's not actually original at all. And then those two imaginary people start arguing about what's original and what's not. And meanwhile, everyone else is actually just getting their writing done. So again, do ideas matter? Do original ideas matter? Honestly, real talk, I kind of feel that like, because people can twist my words into whatever they want to, that's the great power of our human ability, but I feel that ideas are nice, they can get you started in writing, they can inspire you to write, but they don't ultimately matter. It's ultimately about the execution, how you tell the story, how you make it interesting, how you make it enticing, how you make us care for that world, for those characters, for what is happening. As the question said, if you feel that it's tedious and you don't enjoy it, then don't do it. Don't actively be looking for ways to make your story seem more original. And honestly, between you and me, like, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try to make your story as original as possible, someone is going to come out of the fog and yell at you and tell you, actually, this story is pretty much like this one book from the 70s that was printed once and never again, but I do remember it because I read it in high school. Someone will tell you that somewhere, and it doesn't really matter because it's just people being reductive. So, once again, really quickly, it's not the idea for your story, but rather how you tell this story that makes it effective, that makes it last in a reader's mind. Again, we can all think of story ideas that did not went very far. What's in the basement, Max? Disappointment. That's what's in the basement. So, again, I've gone on way too long. In summary, once again, it's not really the idea that matters, and I know that that sounds like heresy to a lot of people, but it's not. It's ultimately just the writing that matters. It's the writing that keeps people coming back. Writing, or your particular style of telling stories, is what gets people to keep coming back to seeing what else you're working on beyond just one story or several or a handful of books. It's the idea of you find that one writer who you really enjoy reading and learning, oh, they're working on a new series or they're doing this, and you don't even care about what it is, you just want to read it because you enjoy the way they tell stories. That's pretty much just that. So, dear writerly friends out there worrying about the concept of originality or whether your story is original or not, stop squinting your eyes, stop looking for patterns, get writing, okay? Okay. And as for the third question of today, it goes a little bit like this. I am writing a story with multiple parts and multiple perspectives, and I built this idea up for years before writing it. I got to know these characters through personality and background, and I really want to show all that, although it's irrelevant to the main plot and goal. How do you feel about writing soft plots irrelevant to the main story? I'm gonna show my bias right here because I believe that story is first and foremost about character, and that plot is a byproduct of characters taking action, making choices, and facing the consequences of said choices. The good old, the golden Marcy rule. Named after my wonderful creative writing professor, Marcy. Now, I love characters. I read stories for characters. So when you show up here and tell me, I think I want to show more about my character's personality and their background, but it's irrelevant. Is it really irrelevant? Is it? I'm gonna talk more about this in a second, but I kind of sit here and I'm like, isn't the story about the characters? So wouldn't elements that talk about where they came from, what they did, how they are the person they are now, aren't they relevant to the story? Because isn't the story about the characters? But anyhow, that's more rambling than anything else. I feel that if I was reading a story and the story revolves around these characters and I was giving the chance to know more about them, their background, their personality, I would enjoy that. That being said, I think that this question is not particularly about showing character, personality, and backgrounds, it's about soft plots. So, let's talk a little bit about soft plots and an effective way, or the most effective way of adding soft plots to your story. And I guess if I have to continue on with the silly anime parallels, the most ineffective side plots are those that actively detour the story, which is to say that whatever is the most important element in the story right now, whatever we're working towards, has to come to a stop, a halt. So we can have this detour, and it ends up being ultimately unimportant to the story. It did not only bring whatever we were worrying about as the reader to a stop, it forced us to witness something that doesn't actually have any impact on the rest of the book. It is what some people would refer to as filler. It feels like filler because it's not relevant, it doesn't affect the story, and when we move on again with the rest of the story and whatever the characters are doing, the story goes on as though it never happened. A filler episode, a good old classic Hot Springs episode. So by establishing what I believe is an ineffective soft plot, the solution appears before us relatively quickly. In order to make a successful or effective soft plot in your story, I would like to urge you to first and foremost, not have it detour the entire story, not have the whatever we're worrying about or dealing with right now come to a pause. Instead, have it be parallel. It's happening at the same time. Whatever we're dealing with is relevant to what's going on, and when this side plot is over or the side plot advances, it directly affects the rest of the story. One exception to that last point, I guess, would be a flashback that doesn't affect the story, but it affects the reader by showing them how this character came to be at this particular moment. I think that's also effective. Ultimately, you want the reader to feel as though this is important, as though there is a reason why we are reading this. It's not just here for padding. It's not just, well, we needed this to be 12 episodes, but we really only have like 10 episodes of actual story. So, Hot Springs episode it is. Enough with the anime analogies. I think, again, in summary, that these side plots are most effective when they don't bring the story to a complete halt. They're happening parallel to the rest of the story, and they affect the story or the reader in some shape, way, or form. Whether by the reader learning more about where these characters came from, or by just affecting the rest of the story in general. Because this happened in the soft plot, now this is happening in the rest of the main story. I hope that helps. And that's it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed me rambling a lot about originality. Originality is kind of a really rough subject, because everyone wants to tell original stories, right? I don't know. The older I get and the more I write, the less I care about any of these things, and the more I care about just writing stories that I enjoy. I don't know. I show up here to tell stories and have fun. That's pretty much it. I have found that makes writing the most comfortable for me and the less stressful, because writing is already hard enough as it is, and to have to worry about all these other things is just like, it takes the fun out of it. When I dealt with people, and I talked with a lot of people in college that had all these ingrained ideas of my story has to be this, and it can't be genre fiction because genre fiction is for weak writers, and all these things, and all these other things, and I was just like, man, you make writing sound so not fun. But anyhow, tell stories. Have fun, honestly. You're spending your time writing, at least have fun. But I've gone on way too long. I would love to hear what you have to say regarding the questions that were answered today, as well as your questions for future videos. Remember that whatever question you send, I will give you an answer. I promise. I am making it a point to reply to pretty much every comment that is left in the comments down below, so let me know what do you think? And one more thing before I go, I would like to remind you that if you enjoy my content and you want to make sure that I can continue making the content that you enjoy, you know, these awesome writing advice videos where I answer your questions, then consider pledging your support. I have a Patreon page where you can pledge a certain amount of money every month, and you get cool, awesome perks, like getting to watch my videos early and early copies of my books. But of course, if Patreon is not your cup of tea, how about a cup of coffee instead? Links to all of these things in the description down below. But for the time being, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I'll see you on the next one.